Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you like this episode, please remember to hit the like button and leave a comment or two, then subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications of whenever we release new videos. Also, please remember to share them to your social media.
Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to Dunbar Lake, about 43 miles north of Sioux Lookout in Ontario, Canada. This area was covered in vast ice sheets during the last ice age, beginning about 21,000 years ago and ending about 10,000 years ago or so. The glaciers that covered the land then were as thick as 9,800 feet, with weight that crushed rock into soil as they slowly slid their way across the landscape. The ground rock, known as till, is one of the best soils for retaining water and is one of the primary causes of the ponds and lakes that are scattered across this area. In the centuries following the most recent ice age, the glaciers slowly retreated, leaving the till to act as the foundation for one of the world's largest boreal forests. Broad and uninterrupted forests including ash, birch, chestnut, hickory, oak, and walnut trees create a shady canopy that rises over the land. It is part of the Carolina Forest Area, which stretches from the Carolinas in the United States into southern Ontario, Canada. White-tailed deer and moose haunt the shadows, while bobcats, coyotes, wolves, and black bears stalk their prey. In the early morning hours of Saturday, May 19, 2012, 65-year-old Gordon Shervill was enjoying his annual fishing trip with his lifelong friend, 63-year-old Danny Alexander. Each year, the men had made the trip to Dunbar Lake to fish and catch up on each other's lives. They'd been friends for the last 55 years and had enjoyed many adventures together over the decades. Gordon and his wife Mary had been married for 46 years. Gordon had grown up in Winnipeg and had recently suffered 2 strokes and suffered from diabetes. He enjoyed hunting and fishing, but knew that his health might cause him to stop participating in the coming years. Each year, the 2 old friends would begin planning the next year's trip as soon as they arrived from the current year's trip. In the early morning hours, Gordon had decided to start the day with a trip to the outhouse. The potty overlooked the lake and had a magnificent view, which was a peaceful sight to start the day. Gordon settled in to take care of his business and left the potty door open so he could enjoy the scenery. As Gordon took care of his business on the potty, he wadded toilet paper in one of his hands and prepared to finish up. As he glanced up, he noticed a bear's head at the door of the potty. At first, Gordon thought that the bear would dash off if he just showed it he was a person. Now, Gordon had had his fair share of run-ins with bears over the years. For the most part, the bears had dashed into the brush upon sight of a human, but occasionally they were more curious and lingered for a few moments. Gordon assumed that this bear was curious more than threatening. As Gordon sat on the potty, the bear repeatedly tried to bite onto his feet, but he continually moved them out of its reach. As the bear continued trying to bite his shoes, Gordon kicked his feet toward the bear's nose, but his movements were limited by the fact that his pants were down around his ankles. The bear wasn't driven off by Gordon's kicks, though, and stretched its neck into the outhouse to bite onto his pants. Gordon tussled with more vigor with the bear, hoping that it was only curious. The bear used its grip on Gordon's pants to pull itself closer to him while he struggled to defend himself. This is when the sinking feeling of just how dire Gordon's situation was hit him. As fear gripped Gordon, the bear climbed into the outhouse with him. He grabbed the bear and pushed against it, but the bear locked its jaws onto Gordon's right shoulder. Feeling the pain of the bear's teeth penetrating deep into his flesh, Gordon screamed out to Danny to get a gun. Then the bear gripped its jaws onto the back of Gordon's neck at the base of his skull. The bear clawed and bit Gordon across his back and ripped the flesh of his shoulder as it pulled him from the outhouse. It tugged and jerked him about 15 yards from the entrance to the outhouse and ripped a gash in his lower left abdomen. As the bear dragged him, Gordon tried grabbing passing trees and bushes, but the bear was too strong and overwhelmed his grip. Now certain that the bear was going to kill him, Gordon laid flat and pushed his face into the muskeg to protect it from being chewed on by the bear. Back at the cabin, Danny heard a scuffling noise outside and Gordon yelling for his help. He quickly hopped down a few of the steps on the front porch before turning back around to grab the rifle inside of it. Now armed, he headed through the brush toward the outhouse and Gordon's screams. Upon locating Gordon, Danny could see the bear standing over his friend, but couldn't get a clear shot at it. The bear was too close to Gordon, and Danny knew he might just shoot his friend if he fired at the wrong angle. Then the bear turned toward Danny and away from Gordon, presenting a clear shot at its head. The bear was on all 4 feet and had its head lowered as it stared in Danny's direction. He took careful aim at the bear's head and squeezed the trigger. The rifle's report echoed along the lake shore as the bear piled up, dead only a few feet from Gordon. Pictures of Gordon's wounds would not pass YouTube guidelines, so I've posted them on my Patreon account linked below. The images are not bad, but do give you a good idea of how painful and incapacitating Gordon's injuries were. As Danny trotted to Gordon's side, he could see bloody punctures in his friend's shoulder, side, and the back of his head. The long claw marks down both sides of Gordon's back seeped blood as well. Wasting no time, Danny helped Gordon to his feet, and they made their way to the vehicle back at the cabin. Once Danny had Gordon loaded into the vehicle, they sped their way to the Sioux Lookout Hospital, about 40 miles as the crow flies to the south. Once they arrived, Gordon's wounds were cleaned and bandaged. The wounds on Gordon's head were closed with 12 stitches. Gordon was released back to Winnipeg the following Tuesday after his 3rd round of rabies vaccinations. In summary of his condition following the attack, Gordon indicated that he was sore as hell. Following the attack, Gordon dubbed Danny Sure Shot and dubbed himself Bear Bait. He stated that if it weren't for Danny's quick reactions, he wouldn't be alive. Gordon's future outhouse plans no longer include leaving the door open. He says he will close it and put up with the stench to avoid a second bear attack. Gordon commented that the bear appeared to be healthy after he had escaped its jaws and claws. Only 1 month after this attack, Gordon returned to the location to continue doing what he enjoys. After reviewing the facts surrounding Gordon's bear attack, I'm left with a few questions for you. Do you think the black bear would have killed Gordon if Danny hadn't killed it? What do you think was the bear's motivation in attacking Gordon in the outhouse? Would it have attacked if the door was shut, or did it matter? The next time you use the outhouse, will you make sure to shut and lock the door, just in case a hungry bear wanders by? I think I'm going to bring a gun and bear spray. I will gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so please post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it. Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to a small city along the long and deep Lake Okanagan in British Columbia, Canada. The depths of the lake go up to 761 feet and supposedly house a giant creature similar to the Loch Ness Monster. This area receives about 12 inches of rainfall each year, with 1/3 of that amount as snow. It is a high-elevation plateau that reaches around 4,500 feet in height. Temperatures here dip well below zero in winter, but summers are hot and drier. To the east of town lies a broad and sloping expanse of forest. Pine, fir, and spruce trees grow in a thick canopy that can hide any animal seeking shelter there. There's plenty of food, with Oregon grapes, wild currants, gooseberries, and elderberries yielding calories in season to denizens of the forest. Common animals here include moose, elk, white-tailed, and mule deer, as well as coyotes, wolves, cougars, and black bears. Residents of Naramata are fairly accustomed to seeing bears in their area. They are frequently seen passing through yards and crossing fields to get to resources. The bears in the woods around town were increasing in population, which pushed females with young closer into town. The big boars were threats to cubs, and people in town accommodated the bears, allowing them to raise their cubs in a less dangerous area, or maybe an area with different dangers than the woods. Around 1:30 a.m. on August 24, 2022, Sam Coventry was checking on the plants growing in his garden. Sam had had a difficult time sleeping on occasion, and tonight was another one of those nights. Whenever he had sleeping problems, he would go out and work in his garden and gaze at the stars to pass the time until he felt he could sleep. Sam had worked hard on getting his farm off the ground and was growing a nice bunch of grapes after taking care of the plant for a few years. The plant had yielded bunches of delicious grapes and had become a point of pride for Sam. He'd seen a few bears on his property over the last few years. He had once watched a sow with 2 cubs climbing his fruit trees and just wandering around the neighborhood. His fruit trees had developed into quite an attraction to many of the bears, and he enjoyed seeing them. They didn't bother him, and tended to avoid being anywhere near him, so they seemed harmless to him. After Sam had worked for a while, he began to feel like he might be able to get to sleep. He made his way through the darkness toward his home. As he glanced up, he could see a dark form moving toward him, lit by the dim moonlight. By the time the shape got to within a few feet of him, Sam recognized it as a black bear. Now, a little background information is needed to understand exactly why this bear had visited Sam's orchard. Even when located in town, the sugary scent of fruit tree flowers can drift for miles around their location, depending on precipitation and seasonality. In the early weeks of spring, fruit trees release immense amounts of aromatic oils from flower petals that evaporate and travel on the breeze. It is Mother Nature's way of telling bees to visit and pollinate the flowers. Bees smell the aromatic oils, but bears also smell them, and are just as interested. An example of how orchards affect bears exists in every backcountry homestead. Here in Idaho, there are a few abandoned orchards that big boars claim in their territory so that they can reap the bounty of fruit when they are ripe. Bear hunters are keen to this tendency and use the abandoned orchards to find bear sign and determine if there are any bears in the area. Sam knew that the bear could kill him if it got to his neck or any other area that had a significant blood flow. He threw his hands up around his neck and turned his right shoulder toward the bear, hoping to protect vulnerable parts of his body. The bear reached up toward Sam's shoulder and raked its claws down the back of his arm, opening up shallow gashes. Now fully alarmed and flushed with adrenaline, Sam twisted back toward the bear and flung his forearm toward the closest part of the bear, which happened to be its neck. Swinging his fist toward the bear, Sam's punch landed with a solid thud on the bear's windpipe. Following Sam's unexpected counterattack, the bear stumbled back a few steps. It was apparently struck with fear. It spun on its heels and dashed back toward the brush near Sam's acreage. Sam stared at the bear as it bounded off and wondered if this was really happening. He quietly chuckled to himself and chalked it up to just another one of the strange things that have happened in his life. Following the brief altercation, Sam went into his home and examined the gashes the bear had left in his arm. He cleaned up the wounds himself and decided to skip the hospital altogether. Following the run-in with the bear, Sam was reluctant and even embarrassed to discuss the matter. He expressed sorrow at having socked the bear in the throat and understood that the bear attacked because they were in a bottleneck and it thought it had no choice. This was the first time Sam had seen this bear on his property and hasn't seen the bear since. Conservation officers indicate that the bear doesn't present an ongoing threat to the public and have not taken any action against it. They maintained observation of the area for further problems with the bear, but noted that none had occurred. Sam's altercation with the bear occurred 8 years after Naramata initiated a Bear Smart community program. Sam's fistfight with the bear was the first and only known attack since the program began. Sam hasn't let the fight keep him from his hobbies. He states he has no anxiety about a repeat attack, and he is now fine and healthy. I'm pretty sure that if Sam takes a careful look at the bushes around his farm, he might see a slightly worried bear face peering back, probably making sure that Sam isn't still guarding those grapes. After reviewing the facts surrounding this episode, I'm left with a few questions for you. Do you think Sam's injuries may have been worse if he had run into the bear closer to its food source? Did Sam's timely throat punch prevent the bear from injuring him more severely? Do you think the bear that attacked Sam will be raiding any other fruit orchards? The next time you are in your garden, will you glance over your shoulder just to make sure there are no bears sneaking up on you? I'm pretty sure I will be. I'll be glad to read and reply to your thoughts, so please post them in the comments section below, and let's talk about it.
Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you like this episode, please remember to hit the like button and leave a comment or two, then subscribe and click on the bell to receive notifications of whenever we release new videos. Also, please remember to share them to your social media.
Welcome back to Scary Bear Attacks. Today's episode takes us to Brevoort Island, off of Baffin Island, in the Nunavut Territory in northeastern Canada. The rocky mass of the island juts sharply from the icy sea and climbs to a low plateau of around 700 feet in elevation. The land has been carved by eons of glacial activity and bears the scars as proof. Channels as straight as any machine could make are visible on satellite maps. This has been the home for what the National Geographic indicates is a species that is 600,000 years old. Scientists have dated the oldest known polar bear fossils to 110,000 to 130,000 years ago. As the only large land predator, they've balanced in an ecosystem wholly dependent on seafaring mammals. As the sea cools and freezes, it causes the saline concentration to increase in unfrozen water, which drives water currents from north to south, delivering nutrients as it does so. The circulation of these nutrients cause blooms in blue-green algae and other plankton upon which whales and ocean fish feed. Seals and fish-eating whales consume the fish and return to the Arctic, where they are hunted by polar bears. The ecology of the Arctic is extremely complex, even though there are few species there. Brevoort Island is home to a very important part of the human ecosystem as well. The United States and Canadian governments have cooperated to construct and operate a system of 47 radar sites dotting the Arctic fringes of Canada. These systems are run by the North American Aerospace Defense Command and act as an early warning system for any planes, jets, or missiles approaching North America from an Arctic trajectory. The radar sites are operated by private corporations, which have been reorganized in 2021 under Inuit-controlled corporations. In Nunavut, polar bears and First Nations people have had a tenuous relationship lately. The First Nations have had their hands tied as to how many polar bears they can harvest in their area by the Canadian government, despite having the bears violate this one-sided contract. Residents at the Rankin Inlet have been observing a polar bear near the Diane River. It appeared on the edge of town and walked toward an area called Tent City before diving into the water and disappearing. Later on that same day, it returned and put villagers on edge with its refusal to move on and leave them alone. This may not seem out of the ordinary to us outsiders, but villagers had a good reason to be concerned. In 1999, a group of campers at Rankin Inlet was attacked, and a woman lost her life due to polar bear attack. Given First Nations villagers are only allowed up to 12 polar bears as their cull maximum in their area each year, killing this bear would use up one of those precious tags. In an episode featured on this channel, a 24-year-old woman named Summer Myomick and her son were killed by a polar bear in Wells, Alaska in 2023 during a blizzard. Prior to that, a 31-year-old man, Aaron Gibson, was killed by a polar bear while protecting his children in 2018. We discussed the details of this attack as well in an episode on this channel. In 2021, 17-year-old Horatio Chappell lost his life when a polar bear invaded his young explorer's camp, as it also injured several other people doing so. The links for each of these episodes is located at the top of the video article below, and they connect as part of a greater story to which another paragraph will be added today. On August 8, 2024, a worker at the Brevoort Island radar station was performing usual duties at the site. The victim's name has not been released to protect their privacy, so we will refer to them as Mike. The managing corporation, Nassatuck Corporation, has safety guidelines in place centered around avoiding polar bear confrontations. Employees at the site rarely go anywhere on foot and are trained to quickly access vehicles when transporting between buildings or sites. Even with known and reliable safety measures in place, Mike was somehow attacked by 2 polar bears at once while outside of the facility. After he was ambushed, fellow workers ran to retrieve firearms, but arrived too late to save Mike's life. One of the polar bears was killed, and the other fled from the site. Upon initial investigation of the incident, observers considered the possibility that the 2 bears were littermates. They may have formed their own sleuth after being kicked out by their mother, and were now learning how to make it on their own. The attack on Mike was clearly a predatory attack, as nearly all polar bear attacks are, but the controversy that is swirling is what drove them to the radar site in search of food in the first place. A little bit of information about polar bear life cycles is needed to understand why this attack happened at this time of year. Polar bears do not hibernate or enter torpor in winter, like brown and black bears do. Instead, they enter a mild form of torpor in the summer, which is likely heat-induced. The sea ice upon which they hunt has retreated seasonally, limiting their ability to hunt, so they lay around waiting for winter. Depending on how successful of a winter hunting season they had, and the fat stores it allowed them to put away, summer season is a slow time for polar bears. That brings us back to the attack at the radar site and Mike. The 2 polar bears should have been waiting for winter, but for some reason they were active and looking for food. I reviewed over 60 articles while researching this episode, and to my frustration they were almost all identical, but somehow had different author names for their attribution. Most of them concluded that climate change was driving polar bear attacks, including the ones featured on our prior episodes, indicating that a reduced ice pack limited polar bear hunting, causing their starvation and predation upon people. While researching how climate change and a loss of sea ice influences polar bear attacks, I stumbled upon an article from phys.org, a website dedicated to providing scientific, technological, and medical news. In this article, the viability of the Northwest Passage, being a trade route, was discussed. It was reported that thick ice flows from 2007 to 2021 limited Arctic shipping lanes to only a few weeks of access each season. This report seems to contradict the loss of sea ice due to climate change theory, and the conflicting scientific claims leave many people confused. In a broad study of polar bear attacks reported between 1870 and 2014, 73 confirmed attacks occurred on U.S., Canadian, Russian, Norwegian, and Danish territories. 20 human deaths resulted from these attacks. Canada hosts an estimated 17,000 polar bears, and the global population stands at about 26,000. Female polar bears have a 3-month gestation period, which runs through early winter. Her cubs are born blind and toothless, requiring her to devote all of her attention and energy to them until they can venture out onto the ice with her. Speaking of cubs, our Cub Tier membership on Patreon, linked below, will give you ad-free early access to our episodes, and the $3 per month goes a long way in helping me to continue to produce educational and entertaining content like this. While brainstorming for solutions, which may be used to prevent polar bear attacks, I came up with a possibility. If the Arctic governments killed whales and placed their carcasses far away from human civilizations during times of stress on the bears, would this help stabilize attack frequencies and aid polar bear survival? Would this intervention in natural processes negatively affect polar bear populations more than help them? If evolution has honed polar bears for Arctic survival, should we interfere with its course, even if it means they go extinct? I will gladly read and reply to your thoughts, so please post them in the comments section below. And let's talk about it.
Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider clicking on the like button and clicking on the bell icon. We'll help you know when we post our new episodes. Posting our video links to your social media profiles furthers awareness, and it's fun. We slashed our prices in our merch store, linked below, so check out the bargains there while you shop. As a member of our human community, remember to adventure bravely and be careful out there, especially in bear country. Thank you for watching Scary Bear Attacks. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider clicking on the like button and clicking on the bell icon. We'll help you know when we post our new episodes. Posting our video links to your social media profiles furthers awareness, and it's fun. We slashed our prices in our merch store, linked below, so check out the bargains there while you shop. As a member of our human community, remember to adventure bravely and be careful out there, especially in bear country.